The joke slipped out of my mouth the way harmless things often do light. Careless, meant to earn a laugh, and nothing more. We were standing in our living room, glasses clinking. Music low enough for conversation. Friends filled every corner. The kind of gathering where stories grow bigger with every retelling. Someone mentioned a colleague of mine, a man everyone knew was charming, confident, easy to joke about. I smiled and said if I'd met him first, who knows? I laughed. A few others laughed too. It was supposed to end there. I glanced at my husband, expecting the familiar smirk, the playful eye roll he usually gave when I teased. Instead, he went very still. Not angry, not embarrassed, just quiet in a way that pulled the air out of the room. At first, no one noticed. Conversations continued, forks scraped plates, someone topped off a drink. But silence has weight, and his silence was heavy. He set his glass down carefully, like it mattered where it landed. "Do you remember?" he said calmly. "The night you called me from your car because you were scared to drive home alone." The room softened. People leaned in without realizing they were doing it. "I left work early," he continued, voice even, almost gentle. "I didn't tell my boss why. I just left. I followed you all the way home to make sure you were safe." I felt my smile fade. My throat tightened. That night flashed back to me in pieces rain on the windshield. My hands shaking, his headlights behind me like a promise. "And do you remember," he said, "when you were sick for weeks and couldn't even stand long enough to shower?" No one was laughing now. "I learned how to braid your hair," he added quietly, "because you didn't want to look at yourself and feel weak." Someone shifted uncomfortably. Another friend stared at the floor. He looked at me then, not accusing, not hurt, just honest. "I'm not the most exciting man in the room," he said. "I don't always say the right things, but I chose you every day, even on the days you didn't notice." The silence pressed in from all sides. My face burned. I wanted to disappear, to rewind time 10 seconds, and swallow the joke whole. "I'm not mad," he said, almost as if reading my thoughts. "I just don't like being turned into a punchline." No one spoke, not because they were afraid, but because there was nothing left to add. He picked up his glass again, took a small sip, and nodded toward the music. "Anyway," he said, "who wants dessert?" Laughter returned slowly, awkward and unsure, like people testing ice they didn't trust yet. Conversations restarted, but the energy had changed. Something real had entered the room and refused to leave. Later that night, after the guests were gone and the house was quiet, I sat on the edge of the bed while he brushed his teeth. The mirror reflected us both, me small and shaken, him steady as always. "I didn't mean it," I said quickly. "It was just a joke." He rinsed his mouth and turned to me. "I know," he said, "but jokes still say things." I nodded, tears finally spilling. I was trying to sound interesting. Funny. Like I still had that spark. He sat beside me and took my hands. "You don't need another man to prove you're interesting," he said softly. "And I don't need to compete with a version of myself you think is boring." We stayed like that for a long time, hands intertwined. The space between us filled with everything we'd never said out loud. That night changed something. Not in a dramatic, storybook way, but in the quiet, permanent way that matters more. I stopped using humor as a shield. He started speaking up when something hurt instead of carrying it alone. And every time I think about that room, how loud it was, how suddenly it went still, I remember the lesson I learned the hard way. Love doesn't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes the calmest voice is the one that silences everyone else.